Hey crochet fans, Tasha here. So today we're talking about gauge, what it is and why you should care. First of all, gauge is your stitches per inch and your rows per inch. When you are following a pattern, in the beginning it usually says what the gauge needs to be. And you want to make sure that yours matches it so that if your item needs to be a specific size, it comes out to be the size that it's supposed to be. We do this by making a gauge swatch and then making adjustments to match ours to the pattern designers. I know this is something people hate to do. Either they don't understand it or they just don't want to take the time to do it. But it is very common to find a pattern you absolutely love. You run out and you get the yarn and all the things that you need to make it. You sit down with excitement and you dive right in. But if it's something that needs to be a specific size, it may not be the size it's supposed to be when it comes out because you didn't do a gauge swatch. Alright, so I will demystify all of it for you and let's get started. Here are 3 different swatches. And as I was setting this up, I realized I probably should have blocked these swatches because these corners are curling down, but that's not really going to make a difference for the point that I'm trying to make. It just may have looked a little nicer. But anyway, these 3 swatches, they are the same type of yarn, just different colors. It's the same weight of yarn. They are the same stitches across and the same rows tall. But they are made with 3 different sizes of hooks. Over here I have the size I. In the middle I have the J. And then here I have a K. So can you tell a difference between these 3 swatches? First of all, the sizes of the swatches themselves are all different. And if we compare, the stitches themselves are all different. This swatch here is definitely denser. Here, let's do the biggest and the smallest. That will be easier. You can tell side by side a difference in these stitches. This one here is certainly denser, and this one you can actually see through those holes that are in between every stitch. Let's take a look at the sizes here. Like I said, they're the same stitches across and the same rows tall. But the size of the actual swatch is very different. And the reason we get this different size is because we use different hooks. So keep that in mind as we move on to our next part. Usually a gauge is given for every 4 inches. So what they're wanting you to do is make a 4-inch swatch and then measure. But here's what I do. Since I have this handy dandy knit check, remember this from one of my other videos, that has this wonderful cutout right here, which I use for my gauge swatches, I'm only needing to measure 2 inches worth. Now, 2 times 2 equals 4, so I know that whatever I measure within these 2 inches, if I double it, it means what I would make every 4 inches. So I really only need to make a 2-inch swatch. Well, not exactly. See, if we make a swatch like this one, these stitches along the outside are going to give us a bit of a false reading. We want the inner 2 inches. So what I do is I make my gauge swatches 3 inches wide and 3 inches tall. So I would chain starting with the hook that is suggested in the pattern. I start with that hook. I make a chain that measures 3 inches. Let's see, this one is about 3 inches. And then I would just do as many rows as it took to get to 3 inches. Now I didn't measure this to see if it actually, oh, look, this is 3 by 3. So this is exactly the size that I would make. And thereabouts, because you're just going to measure the center. And what you would do, lay that on a surface and look for the center 2 inches. Don't use stitches along the edge because that's going to give you a false reading. Here's what you'll want to do. Find a row. Now you can watch the video where I show you how to count rows and count stitches. Actually, for this case, counting rows, because I'm going to talk about that first. Counting rows, that will really help you in being able to count your stitches for your gauge swatch. So just like in that video, I showed you how to use the part of the fabric that your eye catches the easiest. Now for me, it's these little dashes here. And that is the part that I'm sticking here in my open window because that's what I'm going to count. So I'll count what's in here. You can see this whole stitch here in the corner. So I'll start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I am getting 6 stitches for 2 inches, which means I'm getting 12 stitches every 4 inches. So I would look back at the pattern. Does it say 12 inches equals, or sorry, 12 stitches equals 4 inches? Perfect. If it says yes, if I match it, then I continue on with the hook that I made this with. My gauge matches the pattern designer's. I am good to go. However, if it's different, say instead of 12 inches, sorry, I keep saying that. Instead of 12 stitches, it needs to be 13 stitches. Okay, I somehow need to get an extra stitch in the same space, or half a stitch really. I need to get more stitches in here. My stitches therefore need to be smaller. If I need to get more of them in here, my stitches need to be smaller, which means I go down a hook size. Create a new gauge swatch with that smaller hook size and then measure again. If your gauge matches, use that new hook size. You do not need to use the hook size indicated in your pattern because your gauge says you have to use a different hook size. So go ahead and use the smaller one. The same can be said going the opposite direction. We already know that I'm getting 12 stitches for every 4 inches. Okay, but what if the pattern said that I need to be getting 11 stitches? That means I have too many in this space. And I need to make my stitches bigger because they need to fill it up. I would try my swatch with the next hook size up. Since I'm having to make my stitches bigger, I will now make a swatch with the next size hook up. I would make a new swatch and I would measure it all again and compare. And that's really all there is to it. You make adjustments up and down depending on your gauge. Now that's for stitches across here. Patterns are also going to indicate how many rows. Now it's not as easy to see them here, and again refer back to my video on how to count your stitches. How do you count your rows? How do you count your rows? I talk about it there. How to count your rows. Okay, so I see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. All right, I have 7 rows in 2 inches, which means I get 14 rows every 4 inches. Great. Compare that to the pattern and make sure it matches. Now I'll tell you, there are times when I may get the correct number of rows, but not the correct number of stitches, or vice versa. Like one may match, but not the other one. What I have found, and you'll have to use your own judgment for this, but I adjust for the rows, or sorry, for the stitches rather than the rows. If I have to pick one, if the situation is where I have to pick one, I go with adjusting with the stitches. Because in most cases, at least for the stuff that I tend to make, it is easy for me to add a row or take away a row to adjust the size. It is far more difficult to adjust your stitches. It's like you'd have to start all over again to make adjustments in the stitches because you have to use a different hook. But it's a lot easier to make the adjustments somewhere else when it comes to the rows. Okay, I hope that didn't go completely over your heads, and you may need to watch this video a number of times to get it. I know it's this logic math stuff that drives some people crazy, and even I have to stop and I have to slowly, logically make my way through the laws of doing a gauge swatch. So take no shame in having to watch this a few times to get it, but really that is all there is to it. Making gauge swatches and measuring and figuring out if the hook size you started out with is the correct size or if you have to adjust up or down. Thanks for sticking around this long. I know gauge and gauge swatches can really go over people's heads sometimes, but I hope that I helped explain it well enough and help demystify it for you. If you have any questions, comment below and let me know. I will do my best to answer as best that I can. Like this video, share it, add it to a playlist so you can find it later, and also be sure to subscribe to the channel so you know when more videos come out. Thanks for watching! Did I just mess up? I always have to really think through this logic, and I'm trying to teach you. Okay.